It's Monday, 1st of July, and this is Daybreak. Well, as promised, it's time to look at the papers this morning for you. And to do justice to that, we are being joined by our news analyst, social commentator, and journalist, Dr. Constance Ikoko. Great to see you this Monday morning.
Wonderful to see you at this one. And okay. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning, viewers. And to help us analyze the newspapers this morning, we're going to be joined by Abdul Rahman. He is the editor of Blueprint newspaper. Good morning. He's in the oversight studio. Welcome, Abdul Rauf.
Good morning,
thanks
viewers.
for joining us. Okay, so the first paper, let's go to Vanguard. Vanguard newspaper this morning and see what the headline is telling us. We're going to pick the story that says federal government retirees groan under 230 billion naira pension arrears. It says no payment made for over a year. There's also legally binding upward review suspended for 15 years. The accrued pension funds in the first half of 2024 is yet to be released for federal government workers or pensioners. Also, for the full year 2023, no funds were released despite budgetary provisions. The release made in 2023 was for outstanding payments in 2022. Thus, the indebtedness to retirees in the last 16 months stood at 220 billion naira. As a result, some pensioner groups have called for a boycott of investing in pension assets in federal government securities, since government borrowing comes mainly from assets. What a story. When I think of pensions, I remember Chinelo Anohu Amazu. She was once the head of the National Pension Commission, and she carried out some reforms, cleaned up the office, and our pension money was raised into trillions of naira. I also remember Abdul Rashid Maina, who was convicted of stealing $4.8 million belonging to pensioners. After a 2-year trial, he was sentenced to 8 years in jail. Maina was chairperson of the Pension Reform Tax Team. I mean, pensioners do not deserve this. Abdul Rahman, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you for the privilege of featuring on this program. Let me say first and foremost, these are very senior citizens who have given their all, in the service of their fatherland. And it will be very wrong for them to be denied what is supposed to be their entitlements. You see, I think something is playing out here. We are talking of trust. The other time, there was this cry over planned by the government that they are taking some pensioners' money, and the federal government tried as much as possible to defend that position. Now, with what is playing out, I think the federal government will have to speak up, because they can't allow these people to continue to live in penury. If you are saying there shouldn't be corruption while in public service, people need to be encouraged so that those who are presently in the public service will know that when I'm out of service, for sure, nothing will happen to my dues. And 230 billion, they said there was no payment made throughout last year or thereabout. That is very agonizing, and something the federal government must step up and ensure that these things are promptly corrected.
And the interesting thing is that budgetary provisions were made, and the government has recently been talking about borrowing from pension funds at this one. Should this be happening?
We need to have a rethink about how we treat our vulnerable populations. Talking about senior citizens here, it's not the first time we are hearing such humongous amounts when it comes to pensions and arrears not being paid. What is wrong with us as a country, really? You cannot do this and expect things to be okay. I feel like when we fight corruption, we cherry pick what exactly corruption is. There is no other definition for what is happening here than corruption. So we need to see the anti-graft agency, we need to see the government moving swiftly to see what exactly the issues are. Where is the money? Why was the money not being disbursed? And, what are the next steps? What have they done to deserve this treatment that is being meted out to them? Enough questions, I can reel out about this particular story on the Vanguard. And kudos to the Vanguard for focusing on such a story this Monday morning.
And when you mentioned corruption, I also bring up the case of Abdul Rashid Minor. It was such a big case in Nigeria. In fact, he at a point ran away from the country. He was tracked down, wherever he was. He was forced back into the country, and then the trial started, and he was jailed for 8 years. For someone to be able to steal $4.6 or $4.8 million of government money and run away like that, it's scandalous.
It is.
Indeed.
The point here, number one, let me even start from where you stopped. Were all the monies retrieved? That's number one. Those or the money is not his. So aside 8 years, the question of whether 8 years is enough or not enough, all those monies should be plowed back or should have been plowed back into the coffers of the nation's till. Then these two issues, number one is corruption. You're encouraging it at a very humongous scale. Number two is that we talk about patriotism. The National Assembly recently passed a bill, going back to our national anthem. It's not what you say as in what you do, your body language. What you're letting the people know. Some people have said, when you're in government, still all you can, because when you leave, you've left, and nobody wants to talk to you. Now get this, no one is encouraging it. But then this is what it points to. How do you not pay elderly men and women who have served their nation long years on end? How much is it? You can't pay them. But government officials drive their big cars, they build houses for themselves, they have constituency allowance, and they're there watching. You do not encourage Nigerians, you don't encourage the pensioners, people who are going to soon get out of government this way. And you can't talk about patriotism. I might be patriotic, whatever happens, but all of us don't operate on the same level and don't think alike. This is terribly, terribly unbecoming, and I can't find enough words to talk about this. How does government allow this to go on?
Right.
It's horrible,
right.
to say the least, really.
Right. I'm sure
I'm practically angry because these are people's fathers and mothers who have served the nation.
Right. I'm sure that many Nigerians hope that this is cleaned up quickly, because it doesn't encourage people to serve Nigeria.
At all.
And also, I think it also says that when you're in government, you somehow have to steal as much as possible, because when you retire, there's nothing for you. Okay, let's move on to this day newspaper. The top story there that we're looking at is World Bank at $19.5 billion. Nigeria accounted for 35% of sub-Saharan Africa's diaspora remittance in 2023. Global Diaspora Fund transfer to hit 690 billion naira by 2025. Sorry, dollars, not naira. The United States is the largest state or country where the remittances come from, followed by Saudi Arabia and Switzerland. Interesting, Saudi Arabia there. Then CBN governor says Nigeria expects more to boost its foreign exchange earnings from remittances. It says remittances remain a crucial source of external finance for low and middle income countries. We've always known that in Africa, the Nigerian diaspora goes ahead or is ahead in terms of remittances. This is not new. But also, we talk about the foreign exchange earnings that we gain from this. But we need several other sources of foreign exchange. And we also haven't managed effectively these remittances in a way that it can be plugged into the development of the country. Abdul Rahman.
$5 billion. What a huge sum. But the question is, it tells us something about the confidence, the faith, Nigerians in the diaspora still have in this country. But now the question is, what are we really doing with this? And how much of impact has this, remittance have or had on our economy, on us as a nation? We should be talking about the good management of these remittances, because it is we hear this story year in, year out, that a lot of remittances are being thrown into this country and people are aware. But what are we really doing with the money? This should go a long way. I think that's what the federal government should be looking at. This should go a long way in reducing our foreign borrowing. If we have this much, $19.5 billion in 2023, then the question is, where is the money? How was it spent? I think we need to ask questions, and people must give us the right answer. But on the whole, it is quite encouraging that the Nigerians living abroad, like I said, they still have faith in this country, and they are doing wonderfully well to ensure that they give their best to ensure the country remains as one and also flourish economically and prosper the right way.
I mean, a lot of these remittances go directly to private individuals, to families. So, for instance, they send the money, it's in a bank. Families go and withdraw them for school fees, for rent, for daily living, for all sorts of things. So, it's not that it's somewhere where the government can make use of it. However, different countries have made the case that if it's effectively managed, government can also borrow some of this money. But even 19 billion is not a lot of fund for a country as big as Nigeria, or the size of Nigeria.
Well, you may not. Okay, you want to go ahead, Abdurrahman?
Okay, you see, it is not about the sum of that money, but the judicious spending of the money. Now, the government providing the right environment for these monies to be spent? By the time these monies are, spent the right way, definitely they're going to have impact on the economy. We don't want a situation where at least, okay, let's look at the security now. The government is trying as much as possible to ensure that they bring down the security. Yes, there are occasional strikes where the hoodlums, hit once in a while. But the fact remains that if the right environment is provided for the people and for these remittances to flourish very well, we can be sure that I think there's going to be a kind of even spread economically.
Well, Dr. Ikuku, I mean, 95 billion, you say?
19 billion.
$19 billion.
Dollars.
And that's about 35%, according to that story, of sub-Saharan Africa's total remittances. So it does highlight the huge role and the huge population that Nigeria's diaspora plays to the region. While it may not be huge compared to other countries such as India, I think you mentioned a bit earlier, but it may not be fair comparing apples and oranges given their population size, our population size. But to the fact that these people even bring such money into the country, I mean, I think we should give them their voting rights already. Allow them vote, they have earned it. But like Mr. Abdurrahman did say, indeed, while this money is not going to the government coffers, it does ease some of the economic pressures when it goes to these families in the country. And to make it easier, I feel that there's room for this money to be more. I think government has also had the conversation in recent times of how do we increase these remittances. I'm not sure. I think one data also said we can triple this. I can't recall that data, but I know I saw it somewhere last week. Policies that make it easier to send this money. The transfer cost may be reduced for the people. Provide incentives for them as well. For productive investment of remittances could also help Nigeria increase this $19 billion that we are seeing. Well, Dr. Ikuku.
It's going to increase because it says that by 2025, it will be about 690 billion. But the other point is that if the government has a framework for diaspora to invest in Nigeria, in specific projects, then you're talking development. Then people can say, okay, it's not just about...
Like housing. I think the Diaspora Commission came up with housing recently, although people are kicking against that you cannot have housing projects prioritize the diasporans who earn in dollars and foreign currencies to Nigerians here. They can barely afford anything, and then they struggle to own houses, and then you want to prioritize housing for diasporans. So it's a debate going on, but I do understand the concept.
There was a diaspora bond floated a couple of years ago. Things like that where you can say deliberately, intentional, you're intentional about, directing these monies in areas that it can, it can be used to boost the economy, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, they say little drops of water fill the bucket. So it's not particularly about the amount now. The point is that something is coming in. And if that can be encouraged to come in regularly, and like you said there, like this day has, it's going to increase. But we're talking about monies for families. Government doesn't have anything to do with monies for families, So the question is, apart from this that is coming in to help pay house rent, pay school fees and all that for families basically, how is government going to encourage FDI, so that, the country can have foreign, whether it's dollars or euros or whatever, to deal with issues that government should deal with here. I think that's more what the government should be focusing on, encouraging foreign direct investment, so foreign currency can flow in, so that the monies at the disposal of the government can increase to be able to affect Nigerians generally. Right. That is, again, like Abdurrahman said, if these monies are put to good use, right, or the purpose for which they are meant.
Right. Let's move on to the Guardian newspaper. Here in the Guardian, we'll be looking at the story, how Buhari government failed to recover $69 billion looted funds, according to Obono Obla. Obono Obla alleges and cited instances where he said his efforts to prosecute alleged looters were thwarted within the last administration. That's President Muhammadu Buhari's government. Obono Obla was former chairman of the Special Investigation Panel for the Recovery of Public Property. He cited the obstruction of the former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Malam Abubakar Malami. He said, in fact, the $69 billion was returned to looters under Buhari, so it was rerouted. He also said that Buhari administration did not fight corruption, a mandate that he campaigned on. I think, again, this is certainly something that needs to be investigated. This is a heavy allegation by Obono Obla, and it's a staggering amount that we are dealing with, $69 billion, and no nation can sustain itself ignoring this level of thievery. This man is probably not making empty allegations. He chaired an organization to recover looted funds. He must have experienced a lot sitting on that chair, and we cannot afford to sweep this under the carpet. Abdurrahman.
This is great. This is Nigeria. Well, Constance, if you ask me, you see, each time I just wake up, I imagine what keeps this country going. Because the rate at which people loot this country, you can't just imagine. You ask yourself, can we still survive as a nation? Yet we keep carrying on. That tells you that this country is well endowed. Yes, for the $69 billion, as alleged by Obono Obla, well, I think the fact remains that Buhari did all he could. I'm not holding forth for him, but the fact remains that I think he did all. We're all aware of the Abacha loot, the many Abacha loots that was recovered. It is now up to the present administration to take on this allegation, go into it, look at it critically, and see how this money can. Because $69 billion, this is very, very humongous. And I know, you and I know what this can do if it is plowed into our economy. So Obono Obla has raised a very serious allegation, and this must not be ignored. The fact remains that those who messed up, either the past administration or even this current administration, they must face justice. That is the only, the only reason, or it is only that time that Nigerians can have confidence in the nation's leadership. When people make these allegations like this and nobody is talking about it, then it says a lot about the past and even the present government. The present government must make sure, go into this allegation and come up with verifiable facts on how $69 billion, was not recovered. I think this is very important for our nation, for us as a nation, if you are to move forward.
Let's stay on the issue of obstruction, here, when he says that Abubakar Malami was obstructing this recovery. I think this is a big indictment. Allegation. That's why we are saying that this needs to be looked into. For government officials are there to serve the government and to serve the people. If you have a seat or you are in authority and you're obstructing justice, that in itself, it's a problem. And that person is the Attorney General of the Federation, or was the Attorney General of the Federation. It says that you don't even understand your job and what you're supposed to be doing on that seat. Adesuwa.
I think this is still, this is still at the realm of allegation.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have to give the benefit of that doubt. It's still an allegation. But what we are saying is that
all of these people mentioned are still alive. It does raise questions about the effectiveness and, transparency of the Buhari-led administration, where it came into power as that, anti-graft, administration. In fact, the president was elected, in the sub-region as the icon of anti-graft. He's...
Remember the body language?
Yes, the body language.
Yeah.
We're going to fight corruption. We jailed governors and, we did everything. But we're now seeing these revelations after the administration has gone. And this is a pattern we are seeing repeatedly. We have governments come into power, the promise, to do everything heaven and earth, and then they leave office and we see the wind blows and we see everything that is hidden under the vows, bomb. It's sad. But again, I align with Mr. Abdurrahman this morning to say $69 billion.
That's just one incident.
How is that even possible?
There are many.
Sometimes I wonder if these figures are even accurate, because they are mind-boggling. We cannot be a nation struggling to pay arrears of pensioners. We cannot be a nation removing subsidy from the people on petrol, on food items, and yet we have people who go scot-free with 69 billion. We have people who go away with 80 billion. These figures they're crazy. They're crazy, and I don't think any government, whether it's the same party or not, should fold its arms and let it slide. There
are many sides to the story. Recently, Britain is about to hold its election, July 4th. I think either Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. There was a case of betting. It was investigated, both for Labour and for the Conservatives. And I think the Labour guy was sacked or something. Obonobla says Buhari's administration returned billions of dollars after investigation. Even though you would say the buck stops at the table of Buhari, but apparently they were doing something. Then he accuses Malami of, for example, he said he told him, I sent a memo to Malami to brief him on what we're doing, only for him to tell me that he'd never mandated me to do things I investigated. This is a quote from him. So you have the side of Malami, who is being accused, like we said, this is an allegation. One expects him to speak on this issue. Then you also have the side of Obona Obla. This speaks volume about integrity. This attitude of people leaving government, and then you come speaking afterwards. It kind of makes nonsense of the whole thing.
They suddenly find their voices out of office.
It kind of makes nonsense of the whole thing, because truly, if you know that you were in government and this was happening and you didn't like it, what do? You resign. Then talk about it. But when you talk about it after the fact, you're insulting the sensibility of Nigerians, whether it's true or not. If you're in government and you think they're doing what you don't like, resign and then talk about it. So, like I said, on those fronts, this question should be tackled. And then on the side of the government or the people in power right now, when issues like this come up, what do? You investigate them. You find out. And then those who offended are brought the book. But this thing is playing up And very soon, it will just go under the river and nobody talks and life continues as usual. It shouldn't be happening.
But Undi, are you saying that when somebody leaves government and, for instance, he's been interviewed by a journalist and revelations are made, do you say it's an indictment on the person to not have spoken earlier?
Why shouldn't you? Like I said
really.
Clearly, if you're in government and this is you're part of that government. You're part of the government. So if these things were happening, I mean, when you talk about integrity.
But he also explained the battles he had to fight during that government.
Whatever. See, we're looking at this
Malami.
on so many sides. We can't afford to look on this on one side. This is one person's voice. And we're saying it's even an allegation because people are going to speak up. Whether it's true or not, it's an allegation. And it has to be investigated. Will the government investigate it? Why did you speak after the fact? Malami has to speak. Why didn't you resign? Those are questions that must be brought. Somebody should ask him that question. I don't think it was asked of him. So we hear what he has to answer.
Well, the point is that Nigeria is in a dire state, and this kind of thing shouldn't be happening. Do we have time to take the next story before we go on break?
We'll
go on a break.
You're still watching Daybreak here on Horizons, and we're reviewing the papers, both local and international. Well, we haven't got to international yet, so we'll be back. Don't go away.
Welcome back. It's 7:33 a.m. You're still watching Daybreak, and it's the paper review on the show with Dr. Constance Okoko and our guest analyst for today,
Abdul Rahman.
Dr. Okoko, back to you.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at the Guardian newspaper. There's a story on the suicide attack in Borno State. Goza suicide attacks. Tinubu mourns, vows justice as death toll rises to 23. What a sad day for Borno State again. The bombings, the suicide attacks have continued for years, not only in Borno State. Across Nigeria, we've seen that decline steadily in security for a while during the elections. Last year, it got better, but it looks like we've gone back to square one. Abdul Rahman, such an unfortunate incident in Borno State there.
Well, it's quite unfortunate that this development is very tragic. I must tell you that I had the benefit of visiting Borno State sometimes last month, and my experience was quite palatable. I tried to reach some of the local areas, that is the suburbs of Maiduguri, and by the time I came back, I came to the conclusion that, look, I think things are picking up in Borno. In fact, I was even at the ex-Boko Haram fighters camp. I went in there just on my own, and I saw the way everything was going on. And before then, we had the story that the governor was, even in Goza, is always going to that state, going to that town, and he carried out some developments. So what am I saying? This is a very rare case because things appear to be picking up in Borno State, right? And the fact remains that I think there's a security, lapses somewhere. And this is what we need to guard against. We can give it to our troops. They are really trying their best. Anytime, any day. When you see them, you know that a lot is going. Again, I was there in 2018, and what I saw was quite different from what's presently on ground. So this goes out of a thing, I think is unfortunate, because my thinking is that these people, they had to resort to the earlier, that system of, attacking using suicide bomber, because now they cannot carry guns. The security agencies appear to be on top of their game. But one thing they have failed to realize is that, the communities should also be of help, because the person used as the female suicide bomber used is part of that community. They should be vigilant. Government cannot do everything. Like people say, security is for everybody. It's not just for security agencies alone. If the government is playing its own part, the people, as much as possible, should also try to play their own part. That is my take on this. Goza. It's unfortunate. I sympathize with the people of Borno State, and because I was also in Yobe State, And what I saw there, gives me hope that, yes, these people truly, like the government has always been saying, because government, they say they have been degraded, We drove from Damaturu to Machina for about 4 hours, honestly, without police escort, without any security, no DSS, nothing. It was just, all civilians affair, and nothing happened to us.
Terrorism. Fighting terrorism is never easy. We have our neighbors here, Niger, Mali, Chad, Burkina Faso, also the whole Sahel consumed by this. So it's a difficult one for the government, and we're hoping for the best. Let's quickly go to Punch. Punch newspaper, import duty, bank plane grounded as federal government clamps down on private jets. This grounded jet belongs to a leading Nigerian bank. No name was mentioned. I guess it would have been good to name and shame. That's your word, name and shame. Shame. It was grounded by the Nigerian Customs Service over alleged 1.9 billion naira unpaid duties. This is coming barely a month after immigration started a 1-month verification exercise for private jet owners. This pertains to jet operators who imported aircrafts illegally without paying the necessary import duties. At least 80 private jet owners are expected to present their documents to the authorities. A similar exercise in 2019 yielded 2 billion naira for the government. I mean, if you can buy and operate a private jet, then you should be able to pay the duties. This one.
Indeed, and for the first time, I think that on this issue, because we've been on private jets matter over the weekend up until now, and I think that for the first time, the government is sending a clear message to say it is, serious about this, clamping down, and in this instance, on import duty, we've seen stories about private jets and insecurity, related to insecurity, but this time around it's to the economy, illegally imported. Again, there's so many questions. How did these jets come into the country in the first instance, illegally? How were they able to beat the system, to undervalue their jets, to escape paying the right taxes? So there are many questions. And while we ask these questions, we must find answers to them. Those answers include penalties, and stiff penalties, not just slap on the wrist. Penalties for those who ensure that there are few people, because these are usually a few powerful people, who steal from the Nigerian people, because that's basically what it is. You have the money to buy these jets, you bring them into the country, undervalue them so that you can escape taxes. You're stealing from the poor people, because the poor people are the ones who usually will be overburdened with all manner of taxes in their daily lives. But there you are with your private jets escaping the system. So it does send a clear message from the government. Again, a name and shame is something I would like to see to serve as deterrent, but it's okay. If they've clamped down these jets and they're not investigating, it's a step in the right direction. We hope to see more, but again, we hope to see a reasonable conclusion to ensure that these people pay back the monies they owe and stop others from doing the same thing.
And one wonders, Abdurrahman, 80 operators we have, 80 private jet operators currently in the country. You also have to wonder, why are banks operating private jets, Abdurrahman?
Well, this is very fundamental. You see, we're talking of diversification. I think the decision of the bank to operate, private jet, it is their own personal decision. They know what they gain there. But my worry, like my colleague Adeswa said, my worry is that those in affluence in this country are very, very wicked people. They are very, very wicked. With due respect, yes, I'm live on it. Because 1.9 billion naira, you brought in this thing, you are using it in your own personal capacity. Nobody asks you to. There are commercial airlines. If you don't have the power to do it, why bring it in the first place? You are now sitting on that money. Yet, we have all manners of taxes. The poor people will not be the ones now to be augmenting the rich ones. And it's highly despicable. We need to look at it and take another look. You see, the government has a lot of things to look into because we still have hope in this country, and they should give us hope. Now we are under a government of renewed hope. They should give us hope. If somebody has a one, it's not just that person. It's not just this particular case. There are other cases. If those cases are found, why not deal with them rightly? Sanction them heavily in such a way that nobody will dare attempt it. Don't look at anybody as your friend or friend of government, or even if it's the one that's sponsoring whosoever comes into power. Let the government be bold enough, and like they say, hold the bull by the horn and deal very strongly with that person, because that will send a very strong signal to some wayward others.
Private jet operators also have made a case that there are unnecessary taxes on them. Ndi, would you agree?
I don't know. I mean, that again, that's their word against the governments, which has to be investigated. Obona Abla, in the last topic of discourse, talked about 80 vehicles recovered, and then he went to ask the customs CG, were they charged import duties, and he said no. So it didn't start today. The challenge that Nigerians have is the fact that people do not get punished. I don't know, using that word punished. I mean the law. Okay, talk about the law. The particularly very highly placed people, they don't get to pay for their crimes. When people know, when you offend, even the people who help them, thorough investigation, this will stop. But when we continue to see a case where people are patted on the hand, nothing happens, like he said, the taxes government used to pay people, poor people, so to say, pay taxes through civil servants. And then you're going to obey the law, obey the rules simply. If you're going to import a private jet, just simply pay the taxes. If you can't, don't bring it in. So
right.
Until people get to, it's the law. It's just the law taking its course. If it doesn't take its course, it will continue. Nothing you can do about it.
So do the right thing. That's essentially what it is.
And let the law take its place.
Right. Let's quickly go to Business Day before we head to the international headlines. How to attract over $100 billion yearly remittances like India. This is similar to the this day story. So Indians in diaspora sent $120 billion in 2023 to their country, according to the World Bank. The World Bank predicts that these remittances will grow by 3.7% in 2024 and 4% in 2025. But of course, in contrast, Nigeria sent between $19-20 billion. But, India is 7 times the population of Nigeria. There's no comparison here, but there's something we're getting at. It says that the point that is being made is that India invests more in education and skills, which are in high demand abroad. There's also the point that investment should be made not only in high-level skills, but low-level skills too. For instance, where are the plumbers and other technical areas? India exports a lot of skills in the area of maritime, for instance. A lot to chew here. The future is about human capital development, no doubt. Investment in education and talent is crucial, and not only formal education. It can be all sorts of education, because in Nigeria we tend to focus on formal education up onto university. Not everybody is suited for university. Not everybody will go to university. There are people that their talents can be harnessed through other types of education. But the point is there's need to invest heavily in education. Abdul Rahman.
Well, I think you have said it all. When you look at the population of India, there's no basis for comparison. And if you ask me, I will still say Nigeria, we've done pretty well. However, the approach of India as a country to, development, is quite a far cry from what we do in this country. When you are talking of people using skills to earn living, I think it is far more obtainable in India than Nigeria. And what we should do essentially is that, you can see the cases of our people, this Japa syndrome of a thing. Some of them do not even have skills. You see what they do abroad. Some of them become, mere car washers. They become taxi drivers. Some of them will even be loitering around being security guards and what have you. But these guys, they train them effectively. And there are things they equally manufacture, which they push abroad. So those products, by the time those patronizing the products of the country, the receiving countries, when they see them, they will know, okay, certainly let us try and, poach, if I can use that word, some guys from India to be part of us. So the high remittances from that country is clearly understood. So what Nigeria should do in this regard is that, as much as possible, we are not saying we should not give priority to conventional education, but there's need for us to give more attention to skills acquisition. Successive governments in this country have always said, paid lip service to, we are doing small and medium scale industries and all that. When you go there, you see what they are doing, you realize that we don't even appear to be set to take off. Not to talk of taking off. So these are the things we should look into so that we can also export more of these skilled guys who will fetch us more remittances.
We must also say that there are a lot of highly skilled Nigerians that go abroad to find a better living. So, for instance, doctors, nurses, a lot of professionals. So it's not only low-level skilled Nigerians. Anyway, let's go to the foreign newspapers and see what we're dealing with today. Can we pull up the Times? The Times newspaper. So here, the French right humiliates Macron. Marine Le Pen's populists within touching distance of power after reducing the president's party to a third place. Again, the far right has made significant gains in the elections. Indications were that this was coming in the final round of the elections. There's a second round, in the first round. The second round next week. The far right hopes to be running the country after that. Le Pen's party secured about 34% ahead of the left-wing New Popular Front that secured a second and 29%, while Macron's party got about 22%. So now they have a hung parliament and voters question whether Macron should throw in the towel. Adesua. Should he quit now?
Well, I think that Macron is living to see the consequences of his panic mode snap elections. It was after that disastrous outcome from the European elections with the far right, sweeping through, and then Macron thought it was wise at that time to call for this snap elections, but he can see.
That's why I was wondering why he did that. Why did he call for snap elections?
It was all panic, and he thought, let's go to the polls and, galvanize and beat back the far right. But unfortunately, this is the outcome. And I think that's what we're seeing across the whole of Europe at this time with the far right, gaining grounds. It's going to be very frustrating for Emmanuel Macron, going into the second round of elections. He would lose so much powers. It would be frustrating for him. And Marine Le Pen seems not to be backing down. She has the support she's been seeking for many years. This is the first time her party is smelling or going close to power in, I can't remember how many years now. So it's a victory she's not going to let go so easily. Macron is in for it.
I don't even know whether it is panic, really, much more than the fact that he didn't do enough consultations. He just felt, like he said he felt that this is the right time now to call for snap elections based on what was happening.
Obviously, we can see it was not the right time.
What happened was basically he seemed to have taken a unilateral decision. He didn't consult enough, because I don't see how in the same season Marine Le Pen and her party, who were against immigration, were having it all to themselves. And you think in that same season you're going to call for snap elections. I think that he shot himself in the leg.
And Abdulrahman, when you think about it, it's a dramatic turn of events in France and the whole of Europe. Are you surprised by this significant shift, or wave that is blowing across France and the rest of Europe. And mind you, France is a pivotal country for the EU. You know, since Germany began to recede in terms of power and influence and engagement, France has been at the top in the EU. So this is going to be a shift in terms of the worldview and policies. You know, are you surprised, and what do you see playing out?
Honestly, I am not. It shows that Europe as a continent is not a docile one. What is happening in France shows the dynamism of politics. You see, look at the national rally, the party that is giving Macron's Alliance Assembly a very tough time. You can see what they are doing. Now we discuss the how. They need about 289 in the over 500 parliament seat. But what we are saying now is that, does the Macron's party, do they have the tendency to cause any upset next week? The answer is no. So we are looking at a situation where another younger element, a 28-year-old, sorry, I've forgotten his name now, 28-year-old leader of the party is likely to become the prime minister. But how things, play out in that in France, we still hope to see some of these things, because it is quite surprising that they are giving them, they're not even the second position. Macron's party is in the third position. And that gives a lot of concerns. Okay,
so we have less than about 2 minutes to go. Let's run through this quickly. The Daily Telegraph. Putin is hoping for Labour Party victory, says Sunak. The campaigns have entered the final week, as we know, and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says a victory for Labour is probably a victory for Vladimir Putin of Russia. He says that the UK's staunch support for Ukraine means Russia does not want Conservatives to be re-elected. He accused the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage of appeasing Moscow. He also claims Keir Starmer of Labour will cut defense spending on day one. So it looks like the fear of Putin of Russia is the beginning of wisdom in the West. Politicians in the US call his name during elections. Politicians in Europe and in the UK also call his name during elections. So let's also quickly go to the Citizen of South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced a new cabinet. He says, meet your new government. He tells South Africans that it is built on capable, skilled ministers who will serve the people. It's a government of national unity. He said it's not party-centric, but focused on the people. He says this shows that our problems can be solved through dialogue. They've been able to cobble together this alliance, so to speak. The African National Congress, of course, was forced into this in order to stay in power after losing its majority in the first time in 3 decades. It's going to be a rocky start, for them before they eventually settle in Adesua.
Indeed, and we had to see major reactions to this announcement by Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday in a televised address to the country. The DA did not get trade. They wanted trade so much. They wanted a trade ministry, but I think they got agriculture and education. Malema, I think, is the only person who has reacted and says, Ramaphosa is dancing to the tune of the DA, which many South Africans see as pondering to the wishes of the minority whites. Malema and his party are not happy about this. We wait to see, like you say, it's going to be a rocky start. Let's see the reactions to this cabinet that have now been shared. It's about a 35, if I'm not wrong, 35.
40.
About 40 member cabinet.
Then
it's huge.
DA got 12.
Indeed.
And
so
then the smaller parties got about, 6?
We know it's the ANC, the DA, and 8 other parties that have formed this coalition. And Ramaphosa, according to him, in his best interest, is about what you bring to the table, not really about, it's not party-centric, it's about your capabilities. But let's see how South Africans react to this.
And then before we start leaving, you can't forget what is happening in the world of sports, where England at the scruff of their neck just before the match ended.
They are really struggling at this tournament. They
They're
are really struggling.
He says, Guardian says, "Hail Jude." I mean, it reminds me of that song of a Beatles say, "Hey Jude." You know, he says, "Hail Jude." Bellingham and Kane lead England to dramatic comeback. They scored back to back.
Look at that kick.
Oh, it was fantastic. Then, of course, Kane came in as the captain. And I did say it when I was sitting on my bed watching the match, that Kane was going to end 2-1 and Kane was going to score the winning goal. And he did. What a prophetic statement I made there. I mean, I was the only one there. But that's it. And then, of course, surprises. Slovakia, Georgia scored first, but of course Spain showed what they were. 4-1. I mean, it was a great announcement. So Spain versus Germany. England will play against Switzerland. England should watch it. And okay, that will be it here on the press preview. Thank you so much, Constance. And of course, Abdurrahman there for being on the program this morning. From me, Ndi Amogo, thanking you for watching.